Fantasy Football Corner with our fantasy football expert Tyler. We got a little
That's
something
me.
different this week. So
He's got to shuffle his rankings.
yeah, I'll put them on the screen. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, so another week, another dollar as we got the Fantasy Football Corner. Just a few more weeks left in this preseason edition, and then we'll get into the regular season edition where we'll have our annual starts and sit-ems. This week, it's the best picks in each round of fantasy football. So we're going to go round 1 through 16. I'm going to go in depth for more of the round 1 through 9, and then we'll just list off rounds 10 through 16. So I know that you're already going to say Tyreek Hill, the best pick in first round. There's multiple factors. We're going for upside and value. We know that Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, what they're going to do. They're the best wide receivers in that. We know what CMC is going to do. We know what Austin Eckler is going to do. I think that Tyreek Hill is going to be one of those wide receivers that is going to be right up there with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. Tyreek Hill, even with a banged-up Tua Tagovailoa, just look at his stats last year, 1,700 yards. I would not be shocked if Tyreek Hill gets 2,000 yards with a healthy Tua. You know, Tua, he's been doing a lot of training in the offseason to get his bodies right. He's been doing jiu-jitsu in the offseason to help
learn
him,
how to get tackled.
Yeah, learn how to get tackled and go down, I think that Tua, we're going to see a fully healthy Tua. I think that he's definitely motivated to stay healthy. And I think that this Miami Dolphins team is just ready to explode. I think that all the hype is surrounding the Jets, but I think that this Dolphins offense is going to be legit. I think that Tyreek Hill, the way that he's going right now, he's going at like pick 5 right now. I know that another wide receiver that we're looking at also is Cooper Kupp, but Cooper Kupp, with his injuries, with a really bad team, I'm just putting Tyreek Hill ahead of Cooper Kupp right now. So I think that Tyreek Hill, with the value that he has, with the elite upside, the elite level speed that he has, I mean, he is just still got a lot left in him. So Tyreek Hill is my best pick in round number 1. So let's go on now to round number 2. This is where the draft really starts.
Chubby.
And we go from wide receiver position to the running back position. Nick Chubb moved up in my rankings. If you two boys got my cheat sheet, Nick Chubb was outside of my top 5. He's now moved in to the number 5 spot over Tony Pollard. I just think that they're going to just feed Nick Chubb over and over and over again. Like I mentioned on last week's episode, Jerome Ford is their running back number 2. Kareem Hunt is no longer there. I do think that Jerome Ford will get involved in this one, but not as heavily as Kareem Hunt. I don't think that Jerome Ford is as talented as a running back as we saw of Kareem Hunt. And Nick Chubb is, like I mentioned, he is just Mr. Consistent in fantasy football. And looking at round 2, especially if you picked a wide receiver at the start, if you get, one of the elite wide receivers with either Jefferson and Chase and get Nick Chubb, that is probably the best start that you can ask for in fantasy football. So I think that Nick Chubb, especially when you're playing in a PPR format, I think that he is one of those guys, if you look at his stats, he was really the only one of the running backs last year to get 5 yards per carry. So it can just excel at running the football and also catching the football. So I think that Nick Chubb is an exceptional pick in round number 2. I think he's worthy of a round 1 pick. If you pick Nick Chubb in round 1 at the back end, definitely wouldn't say anything wrong to you. But if he slides down to round number 2, this is an exceptional value for a player like Nick Chubb. Let's go on now.
Steal, not a deal.
Yeah, steal, not a deal. Round 3, we do have some news. Chris Olave is now in round number 3, and you also have a lot of talent. You also got Tony Pollard in this round, A.J. Brown in this round, DK Metcalf. So round 3 is your money round. This is where you're probably going to get a really good player, either a running back or wide receiver. But I'm going to go with Amon-Ra St. Brown. This is a guy that I'm just all in on. I think that this Lions offense is ready to contend in the NFC North. It just feels like their year. Amon-Ra really showed his talent last year. As you saw, only 6 touchdowns. I know that he's projected only 5.7. Take the over. I think that he's going to crush that over with ease. Jared Goff, he's going to be looking to them, especially with Jameson Williams being out for the first 6 games of the season. It just feels like Amon-Ra's offense, there's really no one to contend with his target shares. You have Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield along with David Montgomery. Those are probably the only 2 guys that I'm really worried on of taking his target. So I think that it's going to be the Amon-Ra show. If you want a guy that it's really going to start off the season hot, especially with Jameson Williams suspended for the first half of the season, I think Amon-Ra is going to get off to a hot start, and he's going to continue that all throughout the 2023 season. I expect him to be in the top 5 race of the wide receiver position this season. Let's go on now to round number 4. Let's get a tight end in this one. We want to talk about the running backs and the wide receivers all the time, but if you can't get Travis Kelce, I think the next best thing for fantasy managers is Mark Andrews. There's just something telling me that the Baltimore Ravens offense is definitely ready to take a leap of faith up. Last year was just a lot of injuries. Lamar Jackson was out for most of the season. The wide receivers, Rashad Bateman was out. Mark Andrews, I don't really want to look at his stats from last year. He was hurt.
He was hurt a lot.
He had to deal with a bad offense. There was a lot of backups involved. The Ravens, I think, are really going to contend with the Bengals. I think that everybody's going to be picking the Bengals to win this division, but I think that the Ravens in this offense is just ready to contend in this division. Like I mentioned, there's not really two really good elite tight ends. It just feels like Kelce is up there on tier number 1, and then Mark Andrews is in by himself with tier number 2. So if you're trying to get that elite tight end before you exit your draft, I think that, and you're in round 4, I think that the value is there. I've been seeing Mark Andrews go even early as round number 3, but I think that if he slides down to round number 4, Mark Andrews would definitely be worth the draft capital in round number 4. Let's go on now to round number 5, and this is a guy I think that all the hype early in the season, I know that in July I talked up about Bijan Robinson. I'm starting to get really into Jahmyr Gibbs. I think that he is becoming one of my favorite rookie running backs to draft. I know that everyone's going to be bringing up David Montgomery. I think that he would definitely be a solid, valuable option coming off of your bench. But the Lions love Jahmyr Gibbs. They didn't take Jahmyr Gibbs at pick number 12 to not use him heavily. If you saw Jahmyr Gibbs both at Georgia Tech and Alabama, he is an elite pass catching back. And if you want a comparison, it just feels like Alvin Kamara all over again. I think that he's going to have an Alvin Kamara rookie-esque season. Like I said, I'm all in on this Lions offense. So if Amon-Ra already being on this list, Jahmyr Gibbs is not too far ahead of him. I would not be shocked if Jahmyr Gibbs finishes as a top 20 fantasy running back. I definitely think this is a steal in round number 5. I know that rookies, I'm tired of the question mark, like, oh, I haven't seen him on the field, I'm not going to take him. Who cares? Like, you want upside in round number 5, and later on, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to give you that in this offense. And his ability, especially in PPR, he's going to be a PPR machine as a running back. Let's go on now to round number 6, a wide receiver that I'm also
Tyler, why didn't he play in 2022? In case anybody didn't know,
he was gambling like we sometimes do in fantasy football and all of this. But obviously, like
he was a trailblazer. Everybody else followed suit.
Yeah, like you mentioned, he did not play in 2022. The last time we saw him on the football field was about 2 years ago with the Atlanta Falcons, and he was definitely one of the top fantasy wide receivers in the game. I think that he's going into an offense that showed his capability in last season. I think that Calvin Ridley, we saw him in training camp, and we also saw him a couple of plays in week number 1. I think that Calvin Ridley is going to be the wide receiver 1. Christian Kirk is going to be right up there along him too. I think that Kirk would definitely be a late value for the Jaguars. But this Jaguars offense, I think with Trevor Lawrence, he's going to continue to take a leap up every year. So I think that Calvin Ridley, he's got some elite traits that you want in the wide receiver position. To get him in round number 6, I mean, if you're playing in a 2-flex league, if you have Calvin Ridley as a flex, that's honestly a cheat code, especially if you pair him up with one of your elite wide receivers that you have. So I think that Calvin Ridley, I think that, yes, there's going to be a little bit of rust, but I'm not really seeing it throughout training camp, throughout his preseason action. I think that Calvin Ridley, not really much of a risk here in round number 6. So let's go on now to round number 7. We're going to go with Miles Sanders. I think that Miles Sanders, in Philadelphia didn't really know how to use Miles Sanders. I think now that he's going to be the feature back in Carolina, there is Chuba Hubbard behind him, but that's not really too much of a worry. I think that Miles Sanders last year, I think he had a phenomenal 2022 campaign, 11 touchdowns, a real 180 from the 2021 season where he had a goose egg of touchdowns. So I think that wouldn't surprise me if he did that again. Carolina is going to be one of those teams that feels like is going to run the football, especially with a rookie quarterback with Bryce Young getting some reps in. So I feel like Carolina, with Frank Wright being there, we saw Frank Wright, what he did with Jonathan Taylor in his rookie season. I feel like Miles Sanders is going to use a pretty comparisonly than what Jonathan Taylor did with the Indianapolis Colts. So let's go on now to round number 8. Going to go with Chris Godwin. We're talking about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who obviously want to talk about the quarterback situation. Is going to be Baker Mayfield, is going to be Kyle Trask. If you want any of the Buccaneers wide receiver, I'm going to take Chris Godwin over Mike Evans. It feels like Mike Evans is on the way down, entering his age 30 season. Chris Godwin just feels like, with only 3 touchdowns, I mean, Tom Brady had one of his worst years, if not the worst year of his career in 2022. So the quarterback play wasn't that great. I ultimately do think that Baker Mayfield will get the nod at the quarterback 1 position. So I think that if you're this late, Chris Godwin, he's shown consistent. If he's not going to get you touchdowns, he will give you that reception points in PPR. But I do think that he will, improve that 3 touchdowns. So I'll say that he gets 5 touchdowns this season. Let's go on now to round number 9. Let's go with James Cook. Running backs in the AFC East has been a talk of the town. I think that James Cook, you saw his stats. He didn't really see the field. It was Devin Singletary's backfield. Devin Singletary is now with the Texans. I think that James Cook, I saw him in training camp as well. I have been very impressed. It feels like James Cook is ready to be a 3-down back for a really good offense. James Cook is going to be unleashed by the Buffalo Bills. So that's more the in-depth. Let's go on now to listing off some players. Let's go on now to –
before we jump into that one, I do want to note James Cook. His middle name is Dalvin, just like his brother. So you have James Dalvin Cook and Dalvin James Cook. They'll be playing now.
In the same division.
Yes.
Same division.
A bit there. All right, let's go
on to rounds 10 through 13. As you can see, all wide receivers. Tyler Lockett, wide receiver of the Seattle Seahawks. I think that, DK Metcalf is a solid wide receiver. They did add Jackson Smith and Jigba. But I think that Tyler Lockett, in round 10 this late, I mean, he's been Mr. Consistent. I feel like every year that people try to doubt him, he's just putting it on. I think that with the quarterback of Geno, he's really going to help it out. Round 11, let's go with Juju Smith-Schuster, Patriots wide receiver. If you've seen the Patriots wide receiver depth chart, that ain't much. Juju is pretty much it. Mac Jones, I think that he's going to look to Juju pretty consistently. So I think that Juju being a wide receiver 1 this late, I would definitely take him. There's really no competition, especially in the PPR league. Juju is going to get guaranteed catches every single week. Round number 12 is Jahan Dotson. I think that he's due for a breakout, right up there with the Washington Commanders. I think that Sam Howell, like I mentioned, will be the quarterback. Jahan Dotson already caught a touchdown in preseason. Sam Howell is already looking towards him. So I think that Howell and Dotson already had that connection that you're looking for. Round number 13, Jordan Addison. I am all in also on Jordan Addison. I think that Addison, along with Justin Jefferson, that's really going to be a nice compliment. Don't get me wrong, Jay Jettis is going to be the wide receiver 1. If you're going to pick Justin Jefferson, don't even worry about Jordan Addison. But I do think that Jordan Addison will definitely be the wide receiver 2 in Minnesota. And I think that the rookies, I'm all in on the rookie wide receivers, Jordan Addison, in round number 13. Let's go on now to the back end. Let's go with Tyler Higbee in round number 14. Like I mentioned, outside of Cooper Kupp, there really isn't anybody outside of him other than Tyler Higbee. And Matthew Stafford also loves to throw it to the tight end. So if you're looking for a late flyer at the tight end, if you haven't, if you missed out on one of the top tight ends, I think that even having Tyler Higbee as your primary tight end or coming off of the bench, that would definitely be a solid option. Round 15, Geno Smith. If you have him as your backup quarterback, that is definitely fine. If you have him as your starter, a little bit risky, but honestly, I love it. I think that Geno Smith, we saw what he could do last season, and they improved on the offensive side of the ball too. Adding JSN to that offense is going to be lethal. So I think that Geno Smith, he was really consistent last year. So I would not be, shocked if somebody has him starting in their fantasy football leagues this year.
I mean, if you get him at round 15, that's a steal as a starting quarterback.
All right, round 16 could have gone a whole lot of different ways here. You know, round 15, 16, I think that primarily will be for kickers, the defenses in our leagues. But if you're still looking for a late flyer, I think that you're going to go with Nico Collins of the Houston Texans. You know, Brandon Cooks is no longer there. They added Dalton Schultz. Nico Collins just feels like he's going to be the wide receiver one. And we'll definitely be interested to see. I think it's going to be Davis Mills to start the season. But I think that Nico Collins, you could also went with Quentin Johnston, the rookie for the Chargers. I think that he could also be a viable option. So that is the best pick in every round. I'll leave the floor open to y'all. What y'all thought of the 16 players that were mentioned?
I liked Jahmyr Gibbs where you had him. I mean, he's a guy that's not a lot of people. I think you had him at round 5. It's a little bit of a risk, but you gotta swing for the fences. And then Calvin Ridley, I think is a guy that people are going to forget about, but I was watching their preseason game. The dude's blazing fast. I mean, he's going to run corners left and right.
His separation is just elite.
Yeah, so you get him. I mean, Trevor Lawrence, I'm sorry. It's like he feels comfortable in that offense, and I think we're going to see the Clemson Trevor Lawrence, not the Jaguars Trevor Lawrence we've seen the past couple of years. Wait, are you still picking Justin Jefferson number 1? I think you got to take Tyreek Hill, or I mean, possibly Mark Andrews or Nick Chubb.
You keep forgetting that I gave you Justin Jefferson for free his rookie year.
Not my fault.
Way back when, so you've already had your luck with him. No, I like these, Tyler, a lot. I think there's some guys that you didn't list that I think could also benefit, like Christian Kirk. I think, you know, if he falls to around 7, I like him just as much as Ridley to some extent, because I think he just gets a lot of targets. And
he played last year, so
yeah. So I think he's going to be pretty good in a really good offense. For years I've gone off of volume when I picked fantasy teams, and last year I really tried to make the switch to just value and being in a good offense. So I'm not afraid of timeshares. I'm not afraid of guys that are wide receiver number 2s on their team, just because if the offense is good, they're going to get their opportunities, right? And I think that goes for running backs too. I mean, nobody's scared to take T. Higgins or Jalen Waddle, but now people are going to be scared to take Breece Hall and Ramondre Stevenson and guys that. So
with all the running back free agency markets and the holdouts and things of that such, I don't think I'm touching a running back till like around 4 or 5. I think I'm just going 3 straight wide receivers and then rocking.
Yeah, you want to get an out for wide receiver or one of the few bell cows.
Yeah, so unless somebody falls in my lap,